Have a nice recovery, Sophie. I'm taking Tammy to Fiji for 2 weeks. Don't worry about calling. Reception is terrible there. His casual voice echoed through the hospital room as I lay there, still groggy from anesthesia, the IV dripping steadily into my arm. Joel, my husband of 17 years, was calling from the airport to inform me he was abandoning me after my life-saving surgery to vacation with his mistress. I struggled to sit up, pain shooting through my freshly sutured abdomen, and whispered into the phone. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Joel, please tell me this is the medication making me hallucinate. His laughter in response was cold and unfamiliar. No hallucination, Sophie. I've been planning this for months. Tammy's been looking forward to it. Oh, and I've moved most of our savings to my personal account. Consider it the cost of my freedom. The nurse rushed in as the heart rate monitor beside me began beeping frantically. She took the phone from my trembling hand, just as Joel added, "I've earned this after dealing with your health issues for the past year." Some men would have left already. The call ended and I collapsed back against the pillows, tears streaming down my face as the reality of his betrayal crashed over me. I'm Sophie Winters, 43 years old, a high school English teacher in Portland. For the past 11 months, I'd been battling a rare form of ovarian cancer, enduring 3 rounds of chemotherapy and finally, this surgery, my best chance at survival according to my oncologist. Throughout it all, Joel had seemed supportive, if somewhat distant, which I'd attributed to the stress of watching a spouse face mortality. I never imagined he was actually planning his escape. The surgery had been successful. The doctors had removed all visible signs of the cancer. It should have been a moment of triumph, the beginning of my recovery and return to normal life. Instead, it became the moment I discovered my marriage had been another casualty of my illness, one the surgeons couldn't save. As I lay in the hospital bed, my mind racing despite the pain medication, I realized this call wasn't actually surprising. The signs had been there for months: Joel's unexplained absences, mysterious weekend work conferences, the password suddenly appearing on his phone, and his growing impatience with my treatment schedule. I'd dismissed my suspicions, telling myself no one would be cruel enough to cheat on their cancer-stricken wife. But the evidence had been mounting. 3 weeks ago, I'd discovered hotel receipts in his jacket pocket. 2 weeks ago, a text message appeared on his phone while he was showering. "Can't wait for our getaway. 2 weeks of paradise with no interruptions." And last week, I'd overheard him on the phone in our garage, speaking softly but clearly. "She's having surgery on Thursday. Once that's done, I'm out. Everything's ready." Still, I'd convinced myself there must be some explanation. Now, there was no more denying the truth. As the nurse checked my vitals and asked if I needed something for anxiety, I made a decision. Joel thought he had all the power in this situation. Me, weakened from surgery and disease, abandoned and betrayed. But he had severely underestimated the strength I'd developed fighting for my life this past year. "Are you okay, Mrs. Winters?" the nurse asked, concern evident in her eyes. "Is there someone we can call for you?" "I'm not okay," I admitted, my voice steadying. "But I will be. Could you please call my sister Lily? Her number is in my phone." As the nurse stepped out to make the call, I stared out the window at the Portland skyline, watching a plane take off, possibly the very one carrying my husband and his mistress to their tropical paradise. By the time they returned, sunburned, and satisfied with themselves, they would discover I wasn't the weak, defeated woman Joel expected to find. I hadn't survived cancer to succumb to betrayal. Joel had just made the biggest mistake of his life, and he didn't even realize it yet. He thought he was escaping to freedom, but he was about to learn that actions have consequences, and mine were already taking shape in my mind. When Lily arrived, an hour later, Her face flushed with rage after hearing about Joel's call. I was already calm, my teacher's planning skills in full gear. "That absolute monster," she fumed, pacing beside my bed. "How could he do this? Now, after everything you've been through?" "Because he's a coward," I replied simply. "He waited until he thought I was at my weakest. But he's wrong, Lily. I've never been stronger." Lily stopped pacing and studied my face. "What are you thinking, Soph? That look means you're planning something." "Joel has given me 2 weeks," I said, reaching for the notepad beside my bed. 2 weeks while he's sipping Mai Tais with Tammy. In Fiji, he thinks he'll come home to a devastated wife begging him to reconsider. Instead, he's going to find nothing. "Nothing?" Lily repeated, sinking into the chair beside my bed. "Nothing," I confirmed, beginning to write. "No wife. No house. No comfortable life to return to when he grows tired of his mistress. By the time Joel and Tammy return from paradise, I'll be gone, along with everything he didn't think to secure." The hospital room felt different now, no longer a place of vulnerability, but the birthplace of my liberation. Outside my window, the afternoon sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden light across the room. It felt like an omen, the first light of my new beginning. "But Sophie, you're recovering from major surgery," Lily protested, though I could see the spark of approval in her eyes. "You need rest, time to heal." "And I'll get it," I assured her. "Just not in the house I shared with a man who could abandon me at my most vulnerable moment. I need your help, Lily. Joel thinks he's planned the perfect escape. He has no idea what's coming." As Lily took the list I'd begun creating, a strange calm settled over me. The pain of Joel's betrayal was still acute, a physical sensation as real as the surgical wound across my abdomen. But alongside it grew something else: determination, clarity, and the absolute certainty that while Joel thought he was writing the end of our story, I was actually crafting my new beginning. The nurse returned with my evening medication, her eyes darting between me and Lily, clearly sensing the shift in energy. "Your color looks better, Mrs. Winters," she observed. "It's just Ms. Winters now," I corrected her. "And yes, I'm feeling much better. Sometimes clarity is the best medicine. My name is Sophie Winters, 43, an English teacher at Roosevelt High School in Portland, Oregon. For 17 years, I believed I had built a solid life with Joel, my husband, a successful real estate developer with a charming smile and an ability to make everyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. We lived in a craftsman-style house in the Selwood neighborhood, with a view of the Willamette River from our back deck, where we used to drink coffee on Sunday mornings, planning our future together. Well, at least I had been planning our future. Joel, apparently, had been planning his escape. I met Joel in my mid-20s, when I was still finishing my teaching credential. He was working for a small development firm, ambitious and driven, with dreams of running his own company someday. We connected at a friend's housewarming party. I spilled red wine on his white shirt, and instead of being annoyed, he laughed and said, "Now I'll always remember you." 3 months later, we were engaged. I still have the wine-stained shirt, carefully preserved in a memory box. Now I wonder if I should burn it. Our early years were happy, or so I thought. We supported each other's careers. I helped him study for his real estate broker's license while grading papers late into the night. When he started his own development company, I spent weekends helping him organize the office and answering phones until he could afford an assistant. I was proud of being the steady force behind his success, the supportive wife who made his dream possible. 7 years ago, Joel's business took off after he secured a major contract for developing a riverfront property. Our financial situation improved dramatically, and he insisted I reduce my hours at school to part-time so we could travel more. I loved teaching but agreed because it seemed important to him that we enjoy his success together. We visited Europe, took cruises to Alaska, and the Caribbean, spent weekends at luxury resorts along the Oregon coast. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Looking back, I realize he was already setting the stage, creating a life where my income became less essential, where I became more dependent on him. We never had children, another of Joel's decisions. We'll revisit the idea in a few years, he'd say whenever I brought it up. Let me get the business established first. Then, let's enjoy our freedom a little longer. Eventually, aren't we happy, just the two of us? I adapted, channeling my nurturing instincts into my students and our two golden retrievers, Cooper and Bailey, who at least gave me something to care for. My cancer diagnosis came unexpectedly, 11 months ago. What I'd dismissed as persistent, bloating and fatigue turned out to be stage 3 ovarian cancer. The diagnosis was devastating, but Joel seemed supportive initially. He came to my first oncology appointment, held my hand as the doctor outlined treatment options, and assured me we would get through this together. For better or worse, in sickness and in health, he reminded me, quoting our wedding vows. Those words ring hollow now. As my treatment progressed, brutal rounds of chemotherapy that left me exhausted and sick, Joel's support began to wane. He started missing appointments, claiming work emergencies. He began sleeping in the guest room, saying he didn't want to disturb my rest, but making me feel increasingly isolated. The house grew quieter. Our conversations became perfunctory exchanges about medication schedules and doctor visits. "Joel, I need you," I told him one night, after a particularly difficult chemo session. He was dressed for an evening client dinner, smelling of expensive cologne. "I know, Soph," he replied, not meeting my eyes. "But I've got to keep the business running. Medical bills don't pay themselves." He kissed my forehead, avoiding my lips as he'd taken to doing, and left me alone with a prepared meal in the refrigerator and my nausea medication on the nightstand. My sister Lily noticed the change before I allowed myself to. During her weekly visits, she would ask pointed questions about Joel's absence. "Where's your husband today?" Or, "Has Joel been helping with the house?" I defended him reflexively, explained his work demands, recited the litany of excuses he'd given me. Lily would purse her lips but say nothing more, respecting my need to maintain the facade of my marriage. My colleague and closest friend Carol was less diplomatic. After dropping by one evening to find me alone again, she confronted me directly. "Sophie, this isn't right," she said, helping me fold laundry I'd been too weak to manage. "You're fighting for your life, and Joel is..." "Where exactly?" "He has a dinner with potential investors," I explained, the words sounding hollow even to my ears. "On a Tuesday, at 8 p.m.? Carol raised an eyebrow. "Sophie, I've known you for 15 years. You deserve better than this." I changed the subject, unwilling to consider what her questions implied. The possibility that Joel might be pulling away, just when I needed him most, was too painful to contemplate. I was already fighting cancer. I couldn't bear to fight for my marriage simultaneously. The lowest point came midway through my treatment. I was hospitalized for neutropenic fever, a dangerous complication of chemotherapy, and Joel didn't answer his phone for 6 hours. When he finally called back, I could hear music and laughter in the background. "Sorry, Soph, this investor meeting ran late and we moved to a bar to continue discussions," he explained. "Do you need me to come to the hospital?" The hesitation in his voice was unmistakable. He was hoping I'd say no. "It's fine," I lied. "The doctors say I should be released tomorrow." "Perfect. I'll pick you up then." The relief in his voice was palpable. But the next day, he sent a text. "Sorry, emergency at the Riverside project. Can Lily pick you up?" I told myself this was temporary, that once I was better, our relationship would return to normal. I clung to that belief through the worst of my treatment, through the hair loss and weight loss, through nights spent vomiting, while Joel worked late. When my oncologist recommended surgery as the next step in my treatment, Joel seemed almost enthusiastic. This is great news, right? The final step to putting this behind us? The emphasis on us struck me as odd, as if my cancer had been an inconvenience to him rather than a battle for my life. The surgery was scheduled for Thursday. Joel promised to be there when I woke up. "I'll take a few days off," he assured me. "Help you get settled at home." I believed him. Despite everything, despite the growing evidence that our marriage was fracturing under the pressure of my illness, I believed my husband wouldn't abandon me at my most vulnerable moment. I was wrong. Joel and I met during what I now call my optimistic phase. I was 26, teaching at a small private school while finishing my credentials, sharing an apartment with Lily and 2 cats in Northeast Portland. Back then, Portland still had corners that weren't gentrified, where teachers could afford to live, without roommates. Almost. Joel walked into my life at a faculty fundraiser I'd helped organize. He wasn't supposed to be there. He came as a last-minute guest of the headmaster, who was trying to interest him in donating to our building expansion. Joel, at 29, had already made a name for himself at a mid-sized development company, with a reputation for turning neglected properties into profitable investments. "He's single and ambitious," the headmaster's wife whispered to me. "And he keeps looking at you." I dismissed her matchmaking with a laugh, but she was right. By the end of the evening, Joel had maneuvered his way to my side, charming me with stories about renovating his first property, a dilapidated Victorian he'd transformed while living in it, showering at the gym and cooking on a hot plate for 6 months. "I believe in seeing potential where others see problems," he told me, his blue eyes holding mine. "It's about vision and patience." Our courtship was a whirlwind. Weekend drives to the coast, elaborate dinners where Joel knew the chef, impromptu, picnics in Forest Park. He sent flowers to my classroom, charmed my colleagues, won over Lily with his apparent sincerity. When he proposed 6 months later at Cannon Beach, the sunset painting the sky in impossible colors, I said yes without hesitation. "We're going to build something remarkable together," Joel promised, sliding the ring onto my finger. A vintage, emerald-cut diamond that had belonged to his grandmother. A life worth living. The wedding was small but elegant, held in the garden of a historic home Joel's company had restored. My parents, still together after 40 years of marriage, beamed with approval. My father, a retired English professor, gave Joel his blessing with a firm handshake and words I still remember. "Take care of my girl. She's the kind who gives everything to those she loves." Joel had nodded solemnly. "I know exactly how lucky." "I am, sir." Our early married years were defined by mutual ambition and support. We lived modestly in a small bungalow while Joel worked toward partnership, and I secured a position at Roosevelt High. We were the couple friends envied, still holding hands at dinner parties, finishing each other's sentences, building our careers, with an eye toward a shared future. When Joel decided to start his own development company in our 5th year of marriage, I never questioned supporting him. I picked up extra classes to supplement our income, edited his business proposals late, into the night, and believed completely in his vision. The gamble paid off when he landed the Riverside project, a mixed-use development that transformed a neglected industrial area into Portland's hottest neighborhood. "We did it, Soph," he whispered the night the final permits were approved. "Opening. A bottle of champagne in our kitchen." "I couldn't have done it without you. That project changed everything." Suddenly, Joel was the rising star of Portland real estate. Our income tripled, then quadrupled. We moved from our modest bungalow to the Craftsman in Selwood. Joel upgraded his Honda to a Tesla, insisted I reduce my teaching load. "You've worked hard enough supporting us," he argued. "Now let me support you." I agreed, cutting back to part-time, though I couldn't imagine leaving teaching entirely. My students kept me grounded as Joel's world became increasingly dominated by wealth and status. While he attended galas and investor meetings, I directed school plays and mentored struggling students. We began moving in different circles. The question of children became our first serious point of contention. I had always assumed we would have a family. Joel had seemed to agree during our early years. But as his business grew, so did his resistance to the idea. "The timing isn't right," he would say. "Let's revisit next year." Next year became the year after that, and then another. Eventually, Joel admitted he didn't want children at all. "Our life is perfect as it is," he insisted. "Why complicate it?" I mourned that future quietly, throwing myself into my work with students, becoming the favorite teacher who always had time for other people's children. If Joel noticed my sadness, he never acknowledged it. Instead, he brought home puppies, Cooper and Bailey, as if they could fill the void of the children we would never have. Looking back, I see this as the first fracture in our foundation, the first time I compromised a core part of myself to maintain our marriage. It wouldn't be the, "Just as Joel's business expanded, so did the distance between us." He traveled more frequently, San Francisco, Seattle, Los Angeles, returning with expensive gifts but less and less of himself. Our conversations shifted from dreams and ideas to schedules and social obligations. The emotional intimacy that had characterized our early years faded gradually, so subtly I barely noticed its disappearance. I convinced myself this was normal, the natural evolution of a long-term relationship. My parents' marriage had mellowed over time. Perhaps this was simply our version of that transition. I focused on what remained good between us: our comfortable home, financial security, the life we'd built together. When Joel suggested we renew our vows for our 15th anniversary, I saw it as proof that our connection remained strong beneath the surface. We held the ceremony in our backyard, surrounded by fewer friends than we'd had at our wedding, but with more elaborate decorations and catering. Joel had seemed genuinely moved as we recited our promises to each other. "Through good times and bad, in sickness and in health," he vowed, his voice steady. 6 months later, I found the first lump. The doctor was reassuring initially. "Many ovarian cysts are benign," he explained. But the ultrasound led to more tests, then a biopsy, and finally, the diagnosis that changed everything. Stage 3 ovarian cancer, aggressive and requiring immediate treatment. Joel sat beside me in the oncologist's office, holding my hand so tightly it hurt as Dr. Reynolds outlined the treatment plan. Chemotherapy first to shrink the tumors, then surgery, followed by more chemo to catch any remaining cancer cells. "What about her work?" Joel asked. "She's a teacher." "She'll need to take medical leave," Dr. Reynolds replied. "This treatment is intensive. Your wife will need considerable support." In the car afterward, Joel was silent, staring straight ahead as he drove. When we arrived home, he helped me to the couch, brought me tea, and sat across from me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "We'll get through this," he finally said. But something in his voice had changed, a hesitation, a distance that hadn't been there before. I reached for his hand. "I'm scared, Joel." "I know." He squeezed my fingers briefly, then stood. "I need to make some calls, rearrange my schedule for your treatments." As he left the room, I felt the first chill of what would become a growing coldness between us, as if my illness had drawn a boundary neither of us knew how to cross. Didn't understand then that some people can't bear witness to suffering, especially in those they claim to love. I didn't realize that my cancer wasn't just threatening my life. It was exposing the fragility of the connection I had believed would sustain me through anything. The first round of chemotherapy hit me harder than I expected. Dr. Reynolds had warned me about the side effects: nausea, fatigue, hair loss, but experiencing them was entirely different from hearing about them. Joel drove me to that first treatment, sat beside me as the drugs dripped into my veins, and helped me into the house afterward. But when I spent that night violently ill, it was Lily who held my hair back and brought cool washcloths for my forehead. Joel had retreated to the guest room, claiming he needed to be rested for an important meeting the next day. "I'd stay if I could," he said from the doorway, his silhouette framed against the hall light. "But this investor could save the Hawthorne project." I nodded weakly, too sick to argue. "I understand," I whispered, though I didn't, not really. By the third treatment, Joel had stopped accompanying me altogether. "Lily can drive you, right?" he would ask, already reaching for his laptop, already mentally absent. "I've got back-to-back meetings all day." Lily never complained about the imposition, but I saw the tightening around her mouth when I made excuses for Joel's absence. "He's under a lot of pressure with work," I would explain. "The business doesn't run itself." "Neither does cancer treatment," she'd reply pointedly, but would drop the subject when she saw my expression. As the weeks passed, changes in our home became impossible to ignore. Joel's clothes migrated permanently to the guest room closet. "So I don't disturb you when I come in late," he explained. My medications lined the kitchen counter while his golf clubs appeared by the door for early morning games with clients. The refrigerator filled with bland foods I could tolerate, pushed to the back shelves behind Joel's craft beers and expensive cheeses. 2 months into my treatment, I noticed the first truly troubling sign while paying our bills. Something Joel had always handled but had delegated to me during my medical leave. A credit card statement showed a charge for dinner at Laurelhurst, one of Portland's most exclusive restaurants, on a night Joel had claimed to be working late. The amount, $347, was clearly for more than one person. When I casually mentioned it, his explanation came too quickly. Business dinner with the Riverside investors, forgot to submit it for reimbursement. I might have believed him if he'd looked me in the eye when he said it. The next red flag appeared when I borrowed Joel's laptop to order groceries online, a task that had become necessary as my immunity was compromised by chemotherapy. A notification popped up from his calendar. "Weekend with T, Cannon Beach. Don't forget champagne." Cannon Beach, where he had proposed to me. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. When Joel returned home, I asked about his weekend plans, giving him the opportunity to tell me about a business retreat or client meeting. "Just some property visits on Saturday," he said, flipping through mail at the counter. "Nothing exciting? Why?" "No reason," I replied, watching as he loosened his tay. "I was thinking we might watch a movie together." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Sure, if I'm not too late." That Saturday morning, he left with an overnight bag, claiming he needed to visit several properties and might stay in Salem if it got too late. I tracked his Tesla through the app we shared, watching as it headed not south toward Salem, but west, toward the coast, toward Cannon Beach. Still, I made excuses. Perhaps there was a property there he needed to see. Perhaps he needed a day away from the stress of work and my illness. Perhaps. Then came the incident with the phone call. I was resting on the deck, enjoying a rare afternoon, when I felt almost human, when Joel's phone, forgotten on the side table, chimed with a text. I glanced at it reflexively, and the preview message flashed on the screen. "Miss you already. Last night was perfect. Can't wait for Fiji." My hand trembled as I picked up the phone. I had never been the type to snoop, had always believed in the privacy of Joel's communications. But cancer changes you, strips away pretensions and social niceties, forces you to confront what you might otherwise ignore. I opened the message thread and found months of exchanges between Joel and T, terms of endearment, plans for meetings, explicit messages that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship, and references to a future trip to Fiji scheduled for the week after my surgery. I set the phone down carefully, as if it might explode, and stared out at the river. The betrayal was so complete, so carefully orchestrated, that I felt strangely calm. The pieces were finally fitting together. Joel's absences, his emotional distance, his growing impatience with my illness. When he returned that evening, I said nothing about the messages. Some self-protective instinct kept me silent, warned me to watch and wait. Joel went through the motions of asking about my day, bringing me dinner, even sitting with me briefly before claiming exhaustion and retreating to the guest room. I lay, awake that night, cataloging more signs I had willfully ignored. The new cologne he'd started wearing 6 months ago, the gym membership he'd suddenly become devoted to, the work calls he took in the garage or backyard, voice lowered, the passcode that appeared on his phone where there had been none before. The next morning, I called Lily. "I need you to help me with something," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "But you can't ask questions yet." Lily, bless her, agreed immediately. "Whatever you need, Sophie. I need you to follow Joel this weekend. He's supposed to be at the office, but I think he's meeting someone. I need to know for sure." The silence on the line stretched for several seconds before Lily responded. "Are you sure you want to know?" "I already know," I admitted. "I just need proof that I'm not imagining things." Lily's photos arrived via encrypted email 2 days later. Joel and a woman entering a downtown hotel, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. The woman was younger than me, with glossy dark hair that hung to her waist and the confident posture of someone who had never had poison pumped into her veins to save her life. Most painful was the expression on Joel's face as he looked at her. Mixture of desire and tenderness I hadn't seen directed at me since before my diagnosis. "Her name is Tammy Lewis," Lily reported when she came over the next day, sitting beside me on the deck. "She works for Crawford Development, one of Joel's competitors. They've been seen together regularly for at least 6 months. 6 months, almost exactly when my treatment began." "What are you going to do?" Lily asked, her hand tight around mine. Gazed at the river, watching a blue heron stalk fish along the shore. The bird's patience impressed me. How it could stand so still, waiting for exactly the right moment to strike. "Nothing," I said. "Not yet." "Sophie, you can't just—" "I have cancer, Lily," I interrupted. "I need to focus on surviving that first. Then I'll deal with Joel." What I didn't tell my sister was that I had already begun planning, setting aside copies of financial statements, photographing the text exchanges, documenting Joel's absences during my treatments. The English teacher in me appreciated the irony. While Joel thought I was too weak and distracted by illness to notice his betrayal, I was actually gathering evidence of it. The final confirmation came 3 weeks before my scheduled surgery. Joel left his laptop open one evening while taking a shower. Against every principle of privacy I'd ever held, I checked his email. There it was, confirmation of first-class tickets to Fiji, departing the day after my surgery, in the names of Joel Winters and Tammy Lewis. He had booked a 2-week stay at an exclusive resort known for its privacy and romantic ambiance. The POW reservation noted it was for a special occasion. I couldn't help but wonder what they were celebrating. His freedom from a sick wife? The beginning of their public life together? I closed the laptop and returned to the couch, a strange calm settling over me. Knowledge, even painful knowledge, brings its own kind of power. Joel thought he was orchestrating an elaborate escape. He had no idea I was already 10 steps ahead, of him planning a disappearance of my own. The definitive moment of truth came exactly 8 days before my scheduled surgery. The house was empty. Joel had left for what he claimed was an overnight business trip to Seattle, and I had the rare luxury of solitude. My energy had improved slightly between chemo treatments, and I decided to tackle some light cleaning, something to feel useful and normal again. In our bedroom closet, while reaching for the vacuum, I knocked over one of Joel's shoeboxes, the kind that held his expensive dress shoes. The lid dislodged, and instead of finding Italian leather Oxfords, I discovered a collection of items that stopped my breath. A small velvet jewelry box, hotel keycards, handwritten notes, and several Polaroid photos. My hands trembled as I lifted one of the photos. It showed Joel and a woman, Tammy, on what appeared to be a private boat, champagne flutes in hand, her head thrown back in laughter as he kissed her neck. The casual intimacy of the image struck me like a physical blow. The date stamp in the corner read 4 months ago, right after my second round of chemotherapy, when Joel had claimed to be at a development conference in Seattle. Another photo showed them in front of a Christmas tree I didn't recognize, arms around each other, looking for all the world like an established couple celebrating the holidays together. December, when I had been too weak from treatment to do more than hang a single wreath on our front door. While I had been dwelling in the sterile world of oncology wards, my husband had been creating holiday memories with another woman. I opened the jewelry box with fingers that felt disconnected from my body. Inside lay a white gold necklace with a pendant shaped like a palm tree, inset with tiny diamonds. Attached was a small card. For our new beginning in paradise, all my love, Jay. The handwritten notes were perhaps the most painful, intimate exchanges between two people building a relationship while mine crumbled. In one, Tammy wrote, "I can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore. Just a few more months. Then we can start our real life together." Another, from Joel, "You've reminded me what it feels like to be happy. Once S's surgery is behind us, nothing will hold us back." They had been planning around my cancer treatment, using my surgical schedule as the timetable for their future. The realization was like ice water in my veins. I carefully repacked the box, my teacher's methodical nature taking over even in shock. Then I went to the guest bathroom, the one Joel now used exclusively, and vomited until there was nothing left but bitter bile. I sank to the cool tile floor, pressing my forehead against the bathtub, and allowed myself exactly 15 minutes to fall apart completely. When those 15 minutes were up, I washed my face, brushed my teeth, and walked calmly to my home office. I opened my laptop and began what would become the blueprint for my disappearance. First, I emailed Susan Blackwell, the divorce attorney Lily had recommended weeks ago when I'd first discovered the texts. I had hesitated to contact her then, still clinging to some misguided hope that I was misinterpreting signs. Now, I wrote without equivocation, "I need to meet as soon as possible. My husband is having an affair and planning to leave immediately, after my cancer surgery next week." Susan's response came within the hour, offering a meeting the following morning. She included a list of documents I should gather and advised me not to confront Joel until we had spoken. Next, I called Carol, my closest colleague at Roosevelt High. "I need a favor," I said, forcing steadiness into my voice. "A significant one." "Anything," she replied without hesitation. "I need to stay at your lake house for a while, after my surgery. And I need it to be completely confidential." Carol owned a small cabin on the Oregon side of the Columbia River, about an hour from Portland, isolated enough to be private but close enough to medical facilities if I had complications. She asked no questions, simply said, "The key is yours for as long as you need it." Then I called my oncologist, Dr. Reynolds, and requested a private meeting. "There have been developments in my personal situation," I explained. "I need to discuss post-surgical care options." By the time Joel returned from his Seattle trip the following evening, I had met with Susan, arranged for post-surgical nursing care at Carol's cabin, and begun the process of documenting our marital assets. I had also withdrawn $10,000 from our joint savings account, a fraction of what was there, but enough to sustain me through recovery. Joel noticed nothing different about me when he returned. He brought takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant, asked perfunctory questions about how I was feeling, and talked enthusiastically about a new development opportunity that had just come up and would unfortunately require his attention immediately after my surgery. "It's terrible timing," he said, his expression a masterpiece of feigned regret. "But this client insists on meeting in person. It could mean millions for us, Sophie." I nodded. playing the role of supportive wife one last time. You should definitely go, I encouraged. I'll be fine. Lily can help with my recovery. The relief that flashed across his face was almost comical. You're sure? I'd cancel if I could, you know that. Absolutely sure, I replied, meeting his eyes steadily. You do what you need to do. That night, as Joel slept in the guest room, I lay awake planning each detail of what would happen after my surgery. Not just the practicalities of recovery away from home, but the broader strokes of my new life. One without Joel, without betrayal, without the constant compromise of my own needs. Cancer had taught me something crucial. Life is too precious and too uncertain to waste on people who abandon you when you need them most. Joel thought my illness was an inconvenience to his happiness. I was beginning to see it differently, as a harsh but necessary revelation of the truth about my marriage. The week before surgery passed in a blur of preparations, Joel became increasingly distracted, making frequent private phone calls and staying late at the office. He accompanied me to my pre-surgical consultation, playing the role of concerned husband in front of Dr. Reynolds, but texted throughout the appointment. I maintained my calm facade, saving my energy for healing and planning rather than confrontation. Susan Blackwell had advised me to wait until after I'd recovered from surgery before making any legal moves. Let him think everything is proceeding according to his plan, she counseled. It gives us time to prepare properly. The night before my surgery, Joel surprised me by suggesting we have dinner together at home to celebrate this milestone in your treatment. He ordered expensive takeout and opened a bottle of wine I couldn't drink due to pre-surgical restrictions. I'm proud of how you've handled all this, he said, raising his glass in a toast while I sipped water. Most women wouldn't have been so understanding about my work obligations. I studied him across the table, this man I had loved for 17 years. Now a stranger planning his escape while pretending to celebrate my survival. There was a moment when I almost confronted him, almost asked about Tammy and Fiji and the palm tree necklace. But the surgeon's instructions echoed in my mind. Avoid stress before the procedure. Come in with a calm mind and body, so I smiled and thanked him, playing the role of grateful wife one final evening. Tomorrow's a big day, Joel said as we cleared the plates. New beginning and all that? Yes, I agreed, thinking of the cabin, key already hidden in my hospital bag, of the new bank account established in my name alone, of the quiet plans taking shape. A new beginning indeed. The morning of my surgery arrived with a sense of eerie calm. As Joel drove me to the hospital, making idle conversation about the weather and promising to be there when I woke up, I mentally reviewed my checklist. My overnight bag contained not just the essentials for a hospital stay, but the keys to Carol's cabin, copies of crucial financial documents, and a prepaid phone Lily had purchased for me. The bag was never out of my sight, even as nurses helped me change into a hospital gown. Dr. Reynolds stopped by while I was being prepped, her eyes sharp as she took in Joel's presence beside my bed. I've updated your post-surgical care plan as we discussed, she said meaningfully, making notes in my chart. The nursing service has all the details. Joel's brow furrowed. Nursing service? I thought Lily was helping with recovery. This is standard for my patients, Dr. Reynolds covered smoothly. Professional care is important after this type of procedure. Sophie and I discussed it at her last appointment. Before Joel could question further, the anesthesiologist arrived to explain the procedure. Soon after, orderlies came to wheel me to the operating room. Joel kissed my forehead, a gesture that once would have comforted me but now felt like a betrayal in itself. I'll see you when you wake up, he promised. I simply nodded, knowing it might be the last time I saw him for weeks, possibly longer. As they wheeled me down the corridor, Lily appeared, slipping in beside my gurney for the brief journey. Everything's ready, she whispered, squeezing my hand. Focus on your surgery. I'll handle the rest. The last thing I remember before anesthesia took hold was a profound sense of letting go. Not just of consciousness, but of the life I had built with Joel, the compromises I had made, the betrayals I had ignored. As darkness enveloped me, I welcomed it as a doorway to whatever came next. I woke hours later in the recovery room, groggy and disoriented. The surgeon was there, explaining that they had successfully removed all visible cancer tissue, that the procedure had gone according to plan. Through the haze of pain medication, I registered the most important information. I was cancer-free. The treatment had worked. "Where's my husband?" I managed to ask when the surgeon finished. A nurse checked her watch. "He stepped out about an hour ago to take a call. Said he needed to handle something urgent." I wasn't surprised. I closed my eyes, conserving energy for what came next. By the time I was moved to a private room, Lily was there, her expression a mixture of concern and barely contained fury. "He called me," she said, taking the chair beside my bed. "Asked if I could stay with you for a while because he's been called away on urgent business." "Did he say when he'd be back?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. He was vague. Said he'd check in later. Lily's grip on my hand tightened. "Sophie, I think it's happening. What we talked about." I nodded, the movement small against the pillow. "What time is it?" "Just after 3. "He'll call around 5, I predicted. "Once he's at the airport when it's too late to stop him." Lily looked ready to say more, but a nurse entered to check my vitals and administer medication. By the time she left, I was drifting in and out of lucidity, the pain medication making it difficult to focus. Lily remained beside me, a steadfast presence as afternoon faded into evening. At 5:17 p.m., exactly as I had predicted, my phone rang. Lily answered and put it on speaker. "Sophie? It's Joel." His voice carried the hollow echo of an airport terminal. "How are you feeling? Did everything go okay?" "She's heavily sedated," Lily answered for me, though I was awake enough to hear. "The surgery went well. Where are you? There's a lot of background noise." A pause, then, "That's what I'm calling about. Something's come up, a development opportunity, in Fiji. The client insisted on meeting in person, and the flight leaves in an hour. I hate to do this, but can you stay with Sophie? Just for a few days until I get back?" "Just to be clear," Lily's voice turned to ice. "You're leaving the country while your wife recovers from cancer surgery?" "It's not ideal timing," Joel admitted, a defensive edge entering his voice. "But this deal could set us up for life. Sophie understands how these things work." "I'll stay with her," Lily said flatly. "How long will you be gone?" 2 weeks, maybe less if I can wrap things up quickly." His relief was audible. "Tell Sophie I'll call when I land." And Lily, "Thanks. I owe you." "Yes," my sister replied. "You do." After he hung up, Lily looked at me, eyebrows raised. "He didn't even ask to speak to you." "He doesn't want to risk me arguing or making him feel guilty," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "Is everything ready for tomorrow?" Lily nodded. Carol dropped off her cabin key. "The private nurse will meet us there at noon. I've arranged for a medical transport service instead of an ambulance. Less paperwork, more privacy." "And the letter for Joel?" "Printed and in an envelope, ready to be left at your house once we've moved your things." I closed my eyes, visualizing the letter I had composed days ago. It contained no recriminations, no emotional appeals. Just a simple statement that I knew about his affair with Tammy, knew about their Fiji trip, and had decided to recover from surgery elsewhere. It instructed him to contact Susan Blackwell regarding divorce proceedings upon his return and specified that any attempt to contact me directly would be futile. "What about the financial precautions?" I asked, opening my eyes again. "All done," Lily confirmed. "Susan filed the emergency motion this afternoon, right after your surgery." Joel can't touch the investment accounts or home equity without court approval now. The judge was particularly sympathetic given the circumstances. I smiled faintly. I imagine husband abandons cancer patient after surgery to vacation with mistress plays well in family court. Like you wouldn't believe, Lily agreed, a grim satisfaction in her tone. During the night, as nurses came and went checking vitals and administering medication, I reflected on the path that had led me here. Not just Joel's betrayal, but my own role in our failing marriage. I had allowed myself to become background noise in my own life, supporting Joel's dreams while deferring my own. I had accepted his narrative that his work mattered more, that his needs took precedence. Even through my cancer treatment, I had made excuses for his absence, his emotional distance. That would end now. The surgery had removed more than cancer cells. It had excised my willingness to accept less than I deserved. By morning, I was alert enough to review the discharge plan with Dr. Reynolds. She had been instrumental in arranging my unconventional post-hospital care, bending usual protocols to accommodate my situation. Normally, I'd insist on a family member staying with you, she said, checking my incision. But under the circumstances, I'm satisfied with the private nursing arrangement at your friend's cabin. The location is close enough to emergency services, if needed. Thank you for understanding, I said. I couldn't recover in that house, knowing. Dr. Reynolds patted my hand. I've been practicing oncology for 20 years, Sophie. I've seen what illness does to relationships. Some partners rise to the occasion. Others, she shrugged. You need to focus on healing now, physically and otherwise. By mid-morning, I was ready for discharge. Lily had brought comfortable clothes that could accommodate my surgical dressing, and the nurse had reviewed all my medications and care instructions. The private transport service arrived precisely at 11 a.m., a discreet van with medical equipment and a certified nurse to accompany us to Carol's cabin. As we prepared to leave, my phone chimed with a text from Joel. Just landed in Fiji, hotel. Is amazing. Hope you're feeling better. We'll check in tomorrow. No questions about my condition, no specific concern about the surgery outcome, just a perfunctory message sent out of lingering obligation. I handed the phone to Lily. Would you respond for me? Tell him I'm resting comfortably and he shouldn't worry. Seriously? Lily looked incredulous. That's all you want to say? For now, I replied, settling into the wheelchair an orderly had brought. Let him enjoy his paradise a little longer. Reality will be waiting when he returns. As we left the hospital, I felt a weight lifting despite the physical pain of surgery. Ahead lay uncertainty, recovery, divorce, a cascade of challenges. But for the first time in months, perhaps years, I was making choices solely for my own well-being. Joel had abandoned me at my most vulnerable moment, believing I would simply accept whatever scraps of attention he chose to offer upon his return. He would soon discover how thoroughly he had underestimated me. Carol's cabin was a revelation, not just a refuge but a vision of how life could be without the shadow of betrayal. Perched on a wooded hill above the Columbia River, its wide windows framed sunlight dancing on water, osprey diving for fish, and barges moving silently like floating islands. The fresh air carried the scent of pine and river water instead of antiseptic hospital corridors. The main room had been transformed for my recovery, a hospital bed positioned to capture the view, medical supplies discreetly organized, a small table arranged with books, my laptop, and a vase of purple irises from my school's English department. Carol had thought of everything, right down to the extra pillows for elevating my legs and the bell to ring if I needed assistance when alone. It's perfect, I told Lily as the transport team helped settle me in. I don't know how to thank Carol. She says having you here is thanks enough, Lily replied, unpacking my medications. She's furious with Joel, by the way. Practically insisted. I'd give her his itinerary so she could fly to Fiji and, quote, push him into a shark feeding zone. The image made me laugh, then wince as the movement pulled at my incision. No sharks, I said. Let's leave the punishment to karma and the divorce courts. Patricia Murray, my private nurse, arrived precisely at noon. In her 50s with salt and pepper hair and the efficiency of someone who had seen everything, she radiated competence and discretion. Dr. Reynolds briefed me on your situation, medical and otherwise, she said as she reviewed my chart. I'm here from noon to 8 daily. We'll manage your pain, monitor your incision, and get you back on your feet gradually. The rest of the time, you focus on healing, all aspects of healing. Her emphasis on all aspects told me she understood this was about more than physical recovery. I felt an unexpected rush of gratitude for this network of women stepping in, where Joel had stepped away. By evening, I was settled into a routine of medication, rest, and brief supported walks around the cabin. Lily had returned to Portland to complete the next phase of our plan, retrieving essential items from my house and delivering the letter to Joel's office. When she returned the following day, her car was packed with my clothes, favorite books, laptop, and the dogs, Cooper and Bailey erupting from the back seat in a frenzy of joyful reunion. They missed you, Lily said, watching as the golden retrievers gently nuzzled my hands, somehow sensing they needed to be careful. I left everything at the house exactly as it was, except for your things and the dogs. Joel's note is on the kitchen counter where he can't miss it. What about the office? Delivered your letter to his assistant Kenneth. Said it was urgent personal business. He promised to put it on Joel's desk for when he returns. Lily's expression turned mischievous. I also might have mentioned to Kenneth that Joel was in Fiji during your cancer surgery. His face was priceless. I shook my head, smiling despite myself. You didn't need to do that. Oh, I definitely did. Office gossip travels, Sophie. By the time Joel returns, everyone at his company will know exactly what kind of man he is. Over the next few days, I settled into recovery. Patricia monitored my healing incision, adjusted my medications, and helped me increase my daily walking. Lily stayed overnight the first week, then began alternating with Carol once I could manage some self-care. The dogs provided constant companionship, curling beside my bed or following me on short walks along the cabin's wraparound porch. 5 days after surgery, Susan Blackwell visited, bringing legal documents and a reassuring professionalism to my situation. The emergency financial order was granted, she confirmed, spreading papers on the dining table. Joel can't liquidate major assets or empty accounts without court approval. I've also initiated preliminary divorce filings, citing abandonment and adultery. Isn't it premature to file while he's away? I asked. Susan's lips curved in a satisfied smile. Ordinarily, yes. But abandoning your cancer-stricken wife during surgical recovery to vacation with a mistress creates exceptional circumstances. The judge was particularly moved by Dr. Reynolds' affidavit regarding your medical vulnerability. She passed me several documents requiring signatures, explaining each one carefully. These establish your claim to the marital home, investment accounts, and half of Joel's business interests. We're also requesting spousal support during the proceedings, given your reduced teaching schedule due to medical necessity. As I signed each paper, I felt a curious mixture of sadness and liberation. Each signature represented not just a legal step, but an emotional one, acknowledging the death of my marriage while asserting my right to emerge from its ashes with dignity and security. What happens when Joel returns and finds me gone? I asked. His lawyer will contact me and negotiations will begin. Given the circumstances, Joel has very little leverage. Susan gathered the signed documents efficiently. My advice is to maintain your privacy during recovery. Let all communication go through my office. While my body healed, supported by medicine and care, my mind began its own recovery. In the quiet of the cabin, watching the river's constant flow I reflected on how I had allowed myself to become diminished in my marriage. I had mistaken compromise for self-erasure, support for subjugation. Like many women, I had been socialized to be accommodating, to preserve relationship harmony at any cost. Cancer had begun the process of stripping away that conditioning, forcing me to advocate for my needs, to recognize my time as precious. Joel's betrayal had simply completed what my illness started, a fundamental reevaluation of what I would accept in my life. 1 week after surgery, on a particularly clear morning, I felt strong enough to sit at Carol's small writing desk by the window. I opened my laptop and began composing emails to colleagues at Roosevelt High, explaining my extended absence and arrangements for my classes. The school principal had been extraordinarily supportive, assuring me my position was secure through recovery and treatment. I also wrote to selected friends, not explaining the full situation, but letting them know I was recovering well at a private location and would be in touch when I felt stronger. I was selective about who received these messages, instinctively understanding that this period of healing required a careful curation of my social circle. When I finished writing, I stood carefully and made my way to the porch, where Patricia was preparing lunch. The spring air carried the scent of wildflowers and river water, a welcome change from the antiseptic hospital smell that had permeated my last months. "You look better today," Patricia observed, setting a bowl of soup on the small outdoor table. "More color in your cheeks." "I feel better," I acknowledged. "Not just physically." She nodded, understanding without explanation. "That's how it often goes with my patients. The body and spirit heal together. Or not at all." As I ate, my phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Joel, presumably using the hotel's phone since international service on his cell was spotty. The message was brief. "Hope recovery is going well. Extending trip another week, amazing opportunity came up. We'll explain everything when I'm back. Jay." I showed Patricia the text, my hands steady. "He's extending his vacation while I recover from cancer surgery. With his mistress." Patricia's expression remained professionally neutral, but her eyes flashed with indignation. "Would you like me to respond?" I considered briefly, then shook my head. "No. Let him think everything is proceeding according to his plan. Let him believe I'm waiting at home, grateful for whatever attention he deigns to give." "Me. The surprise will be significant," Patricia noted, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "Yes," I agreed, looking out at the river. "It will." That afternoon, when Lily arrived to stay the night, she brought surprising news. "Joel's assistant Kenneth called me," she reported. "Apparently, your husband has been trying to access the investment accounts remotely and can't. The bank referred him to Susan's office." I put down my book. "Has he called Susan?" "Not yet. Kenneth said he was extremely agitated about the situation, but unwilling to cut his trip short to deal with it. So he's prioritizing his affair over financial irregularities," I mused. "That's useful information for the divorce proceedings." "It certainly shows where his priorities lie," Lily agreed. "Susan thinks he'll probably contact her within the next few days when he realizes the seriousness of the situation." The thought of Joel's dawning realization that his carefully constructed exit strategy was unraveling brought no joy, only a quiet certainty that I was finally taking control of my own story. While he extended his paradise escape, I was methodically building the foundation for my post-Joel life. With each passing day of recovery, each signature on legal documents, each carefully considered email and text, I was reclaiming pieces of myself that had been subordinated to his needs and ambitions. The woman who would confront Joel upon his return would not be the accommodating wife he had abandoned, but someone altogether stronger and clearer-eyed. By the end of my second week, at Carol's cabin, I had established a recovery routine that balanced physical healing with strategic planning. Each morning began with gentle stretching exercises Patricia had taught me, followed by a short walk with the dogs along the property's wooded paths. The surgical pain had diminished to a manageable ache, and Dr. Reynolds was pleased with my progress during our video consultations. "You're healing remarkably well," she noted during our third virtual appointment. "I'd attribute it partly to your excellent care team, but mostly to removing yourself from a toxic environment." It was during these quiet days of recovery that I received the first communication from Joel's lawyer, a terse email to Susan, requesting clarification on the unexpected financial restrictions affecting his client's accounts. Susan forwarded it to me with a single comment: "He's finally realizing there's a problem." "How would you like me to proceed?" she asked during our phone call that afternoon. "We can either provide minimal information now or wait until he returns to deliver the full impact." I considered the options carefully. "Let's maintain minimal communication. Confirm the existence of emergency orders but defer any detailed discussion until his return. I want him to spend the remainder of his vacation wondering what awaits him." Psychological leverage, Susan noted approvingly. Sometimes the anticipation of consequences is as effective as the consequences themselves. That same day, Lily reported unusual activity at my house. Joel had apparently asked a neighbor to check on the property, and the neighbor had called Lily when he discovered the dogs were gone. "I told him you had asked me to take the dogs during your recovery," Lily explained. "I didn't mention that you weren't actually there." "Did he find Joel's letter?" I asked. "He didn't say, but it was on the kitchen counter in plain sight. Even if he missed it, Joel's bound to see it when he gets home." Maintaining the illusion that everything was proceeding according to Joel's plan required careful coordination. My small team, Lily, Carol, Susan, and Patricia, functioned like a private intelligence network, managing information and anticipating potential complications. When Joel texted again from Fiji, extending his trip by another 3 days, Lily crafted a perfectly neutral response from my phone. "Recovery proceeding as expected. Take the time you need. Just enough information to prevent suspicion, not enough to reveal our preparations." The hospital social worker, whom I'd confided in before discharge, provided invaluable assistance by directing all medical billing to Susan's office rather than our home address. This prevented Joel from discovering my alternate recovery location through insurance statements or hospital correspondence. My school principal, aware of my medical situation but not the marital complications, became an unexpected ally when Joel called the school attempting to locate me. He seemed surprised when "I told him you were on medical leave," she reported during a check-in call. "Asked if I knew where you were recovering. I simply said I understood you were following your doctor's recommended care plan. Didn't seem my place to say more." "Thank you," I said, grateful for her discretion. "I appreciate you respecting my privacy." "Of course, Sophie. Just focus on getting well. Your job will be waiting whenever you're ready to return." As physical strength returned, I began spending more time at Carol's desk by the window, working on practical aspects of my post-Joel life. I researched affordable apartments in Portland, updated my resume to return to full-time teaching, and calculated a realistic budget based on my income alone. I also began writing, not just practical lists and emails, but reflective journal entries processing the seismic shifts in my life. The English teacher in me recognized the power of narrative, how reshaping my story could transform me from victim to protagonist. I wrote about the pain of betrayal, yes, but also about the strength I'd discovered through illness and adversity. 1. Entry particularly captured this transformation. Cancer showed me my physical vulnerability, but also my capacity for endurance. Joel's betrayal revealed the fragility of what I thought was partnership, but also freed me from the constant compromise of my own needs. There's a strange symmetry there, two profound losses that somehow add up to a gain. I am less than I was, in some ways, but more completely myself. 18 days after surgery, Patricia declared me strong enough to begin short drives. This small return to independence felt monumental, a physical manifestation of my growing self-reliance. I took the dogs to a quiet beach along the river, watching them race across the sand while I sat wrapped in a blanket, face turned toward the spring sunshine. It was there, with the Columbia flowing steadily beside me, that I received Susan's text. Joel's lawyer has requested an urgent meeting upon his client's return next week. Apparently, he called the house from the airport, in Los Angeles during his layover, and spoke to your neighbor, who mentioned the dogs being with Lily. He's now aware something is amiss. How would you like to proceed? I watched an osprey dive into the river, emerging with a silver fish flashing in its talons. The precision of the hunt, the clean execution after patient waiting, seemed an appropriate metaphor for my situation. Schedule. The meeting at your office, I texted back. I won't be attending personally, not ready for direct confrontation yet. But I want him to receive complete information about my knowledge of his affair, his abandonment during my cancer treatment, and the consequences now in motion. Susan's response came quickly. Understood. Meeting set for Tuesday, 2 p.m. We'll provide full briefing afterward. That evening, as Carol and I shared dinner on the porch, my phone rang with Joel's number. After weeks of texts and emails, a direct call represented escalation, a sign that his carefully constructed narrative was unraveling. I showed Carol the screen. He's calling directly now. Are you going to answer? She asked. I considered briefly before silencing the ringer. No. Any conversation now would be on his terms, driven by his panic. When we finally speak, it will be because I'm ready, not because he's suddenly concerned. The phone registered 5 missed calls from Joel that night, followed by increasingly urgent texts. Sophie, please call me, need to talk. Where are you? Neighbor said dogs are with Lily. Found your letter. We need to discuss this misunderstanding. This lawyer thing is unnecessary. Let's talk like adults. At least let me know you're okay. Each message revealed more of his discomfort, his realization that the situation had spiraled beyond his control. The final text, feigning concern for my welfare after weeks of absence during my recovery, confirmed I had made the right decision in leaving. Carol read the messages over my shoulder, her expression hardening. Misunderstanding? He abandons you during cancer surgery to vacation with his mistress and calls it a misunderstanding? He's scrambling, I explained, setting the phone aside. His narrative is collapsing. He expected to return to a vulnerable, grateful wife who would accept whatever explanation he offered. Finding me gone, with evidence I know about Tammy, wasn't part of his script. What do you think he'll do next? Try to regain control, I said with certainty born of 17 years knowing this man. Joel hates uncertainty more than anything. He'll attempt to reframe the narrative, minimize his actions, shift blame. When that fails, he'll likely make financial threats, then switch to appeals for reconciliation. The knowledge that I could predict his responses with such accuracy was strangely empowering. Joel's patterns of behavior, once mysterious and hurtful, now seemed transparent, even tedious. The man who had once seemed so charismatic and unpredictable had become, in his betrayal, utterly predictable. The next morning brought confirmation of my assessment. Joel's email arrived just after 7 a.m., a lengthy explanation claiming his trip had been primarily business with some personal time included. He described Tammy as a colleague who happened to be traveling to the same location, and suggested I had jumped to inaccurate conclusions due to the emotional stress of cancer treatment. The calculated manipulation of the message, its careful positioning of his actions as reasonable while subtly undermining my perceptions, might once have made me doubt myself. Now it only strengthened my resolve. I forwarded the email to Susan, without comment, then stepped onto the porch where Patricia was setting up for my morning physical therapy. The air was crisp, the river misty in the early light. Somewhere in Portland, Joel was frantically trying to salvage his carefully constructed exit strategy. Here, I was rebuilding my strength for whatever came next. "Ready for your exercises?" Patricia asked. I nodded, looking out at the water. More than ready. Tuesday arrived with a clarity that seemed fitting for what lay ahead. The morning sky. Over the Columbia River was a flawless blue, the water reflecting it in rippling perfection. I stood on Carol's deck watching an eagle soar above the pines, its freedom a reminder of what I was fighting for. Today, while I remained physically absent, Joel would face the consequences of his betrayal through Susan's meticulous presentation of evidence. Susan called at 10 a.m. for a final review of our strategy. "The meeting is set for 2 p.m., she confirmed. Joel will be accompanied by his attorney, Richard Falk. Based on the correspondence we've received, they're still hoping to resolve this quietly and informally. "They're hoping to bury it," I corrected, settling carefully into a deck chair. "Joel wants to control the narrative." "Exactly. And we're not going to let that happen." Susan's voice held professional satisfaction. "I've prepared a comprehensive documentation packet. The text messages, email records, financial statements showing his preparations, and Dr. Reynolds' affidavit regarding your medical condition at the time of his departure. What about the photos? From the shoebox?" The Polaroids of Joel and Tammy had been perhaps the most viscerally painful evidence of his double life, included, along with receipts for the Fiji trip and the jewelry purchase. Susan paused. "It's a compelling presentation, Sophie. There's no room for him to claim misunderstanding or exaggeration." "Good," I said simply. "And the terms?" "As we discussed, division of assets with consideration for your ongoing medical needs, maintenance of your health insurance through his company, plan, and the house to be sold with proceeds divided. I've also included a non-negotiable condition that all communication must go through legal channels for the time being." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. The terms were fair, possibly even generous considering the circumstances. I wasn't interested in punitive measures, just clean separation with sufficient security to rebuild my life. "What do you expect his response to be?" I asked. Susan's laugh was brief and knowing. "Initially, denial, then anger. Men like Joel don't respond well to having their carefully constructed narratives dismantled. He'll likely attempt to minimize his actions, suggest marital counseling, perhaps even try to position himself as victim of a misunderstanding. And when that fails, he'll focus on financial negotiations, trying to protect his assets, particularly his business interests. That's when we'll know he's accepted the inevitability of divorce." I thanked Susan and ended the call, feeling a strange calm. For weeks, I had been preparing for this confrontation, albeit one where I wouldn't be physically present. Joel had abandoned me in my most vulnerable moment. There was a certain poetic justice in my absence during his. The hours before the meeting passed slowly. I attempted to distract myself with a book, then with grading some student essays Carol had brought from school, but my attention kept drifting to the clock. At noon, I took the dogs for a short walk along the riverbank, finding solace in their uncomplicated affection. At 1:30, I settled on the porch with tea, waiting for news. At precisely 2:47 p.m., my phone chimed with a text from Susan. "Meeting concluded. Call when ready." I waited 15 minutes before calling, a small assertion of control in a situation where so much felt beyond my grasp. When Susan answered, her tone was measured but with an undercurrent of satisfaction. "How did it go?" I asked, bracing myself. About as expected, with some notable moments. I could hear her shuffling papers. "Joel began by questioning your absence, suggesting it demonstrated unwillingness to work through marital difficulties. I clarified that you're still recovering from cancer surgery he chose to miss, for a vacation with his mistress, and that your physician had advised against stressful confrontations." I could picture the scene. Joel in one of his expensive suits, his attorney beside him, both expecting to manage the situation through confident assertions and subtle intimidation. When I presented the evidence packet, his attitude shifted dramatically. Susan continued. The photos from the shoebox seemed particularly impactful. His attorney requested a brief recess at that point. Did Joel say anything directly about Tammy? Initially, he characterized their relationship as a recent development that began after your illness created distance in your marriage. The familiar flame of indignation sparked at his attempt to blame my cancer for his infidelity. And the evidence showing the relationship preceded my diagnosis? That's when the narrative collapsed entirely. His attorney actually looked physically uncomfortable when we presented the timeline. Hotel receipts from 10 months ago, the Christmas photos, text messages clearly predating your first symptoms. Susan's voice held professional satisfaction. After that, Joel's demeanor changed from defensive to defeated. Did he accept the proposed terms? Not explicitly. His attorney requested 2 days to review everything before responding formally. But between us, Sophie, they have very little room to maneuver. The evidence of abandonment during medical crisis alone puts Joel in an extremely unfavorable position should this go to court. After ending the call with Susan, I sat watching the river flow, processing what I'd learned. For nearly a year, I had lived with uncertainty, first about my cancer prognosis, then about my marriage. Now, both had reached points of clarity. The cancer was in remission. The marriage was over. I was still sitting there when my phone rang an hour later, Joel's number. I stared at the screen, contemplating whether to answer. After 3 rings, I decided it was time to hear what he had to say. Hello, Joel. My voice sounded stronger than I expected. Sophie. The relief in his voice seemed genuine. Thank God. I've been so worried. Where are you? Are you okay? I'm recovering well, thank you. I kept my tone neutral, neither hostile nor friendly. Just as I would have told you if you'd bothered to be present after my surgery. Look, I know how this appears. It doesn't appear anyway, Joel. It is what it is. You abandoned me during cancer surgery to vacation with your mistress in Fiji. Those are the facts. It's more complicated than that, he insisted. The trip was planned before your surgery date was set. There were business components involved. Stop. The word came out sharper than I intended. I found the shoebox, Joel. I saw the photos, read the notes. I know your relationship with Tammy has been going on for at least 10 months. I know you purchased matching palm tree necklaces. I know you spent Christmas with her while telling me you were at a conference. Silence stretched between us, broken, only by the sound of his breathing. I never meant to hurt you, he finally said, his voice smaller. And yet you made countless deliberate choices that led to exactly that outcome. I watched an osprey circle above the river, searching for fish. Your intention matters less than your actions. Where are you staying? I'd like to see you, talk about this face to face. No. The refusal came easily. I'm not ready for that. And Dr. Reynolds has advised against unnecessary stress during recovery. Sophie, please. We need to work through this together. 17 years of marriage deserves more than lawyers and formal agreements. There it was, the appeal to our history, the suggestion that I owed him a chance to explain away his betrayal. Once, it might have worked. Cancer and its aftermath had taught me otherwise. You're right that 17 years deserves respect, I said carefully. That's why I'm proceeding with dignity and fairness through proper legal channels, rather than emptying our accounts and disappearing during your medical crisis. The sharp intake of breath told me the comparison had hit home. The terms Susan presented are reasonable, I continued. I'm not trying to punish you, Joel. I just want to move forward with my life. A life that no longer includes being married to someone who could abandon me when I needed him most. This isn't like you, Sophie. His voice had an edge now. All this legal maneuvering, hiding away, The Sophie I know would sit down and talk this through. The Joel I thought I knew wouldn't cheat on his wife during cancer treatment. I kept my voice steady. People change, or perhaps we finally see them clearly. The conversation continued another few minutes, Joel cycling through strategies from contrition to subtle blame shifting to financial concerns. I remained calm, referring him back to Susan for any detailed discussions about settlement terms. When we finally ended the call, I felt neither triumph nor devastation, just a quiet certainty that I was on the right path. That evening, as Carol prepared dinner, she asked how I was feeling after the confrontation. Lighter, I realized, surprised by the truth of it. Like I've set down something heavy I've been carrying for months. That's how it feels, she agreed, setting plates on the table. When you finally stop making excuses for someone who doesn't deserve them. The salmon she'd prepared was perfectly cooked. The wine she poured a celebration of another milestone in my recovery, both physical and emotional. As we ate, watching the sunset paint the river in gold and crimson, I found myself thinking not about what I had lost, but what lay ahead. 3 days after my conversation with Joel, Susan called with news that his attorney had formally responded to our proposed settlement terms. He's accepted the major points, she reported, her tone reflecting professional satisfaction. Division of assets, continued health insurance coverage, sale of the house with equal distribution of proceeds. They've proposed some minor adjustments regarding timeline and personal property division, but nothing that significantly alters the core agreement. I set down my coffee mug, surprised at how quickly Joel had conceded. That seems unexpectedly reasonable. Don't mistake expediency for generosity, Susan cautioned. Based on conversations with his attorney, Joel's primary concern is containing damage to his professional reputation. A prolonged, contentious divorce would make his abandonment of you during cancer treatment more public. He's protecting his image, not being magnanimous. That made more sense. Joel had always been acutely aware of appearances, cultivating his reputation as a successful, charitable businessman with care. The prospect of colleagues and clients learning he had abandoned his cancer-stricken wife would threaten the persona he'd constructed. There is one additional request, Susan added, her tone shifting. He wants to meet with you in person, at a neutral location of your choosing. His attorney described it as closure for both parties. I gazed out at the river, weighing the request. Part of me wanted to refuse outright, to deny Joel the absolution or explanation he might be seeking. But another part, the part that had spent 17 years with this man, recognized the value in a final conversation, if only to firmly close that chapter of my life. I'll meet him, I decided. But not yet. I want the settlement agreement signed, first. And I want the meeting on my terms. Limited time, public location, with Lily nearby in case I need support. A prudent approach, Susan agreed. I'll communicate your conditions and proceed with finalizing the agreement. The following week brought rapid developments. Joel signed the settlement agreement without further negotiation. My oncologist, Dr. Reynolds, confirmed my recovery was proceeding exceptionally well, with no signs of complications. And Patricia, my private nurse, determined I no longer needed daily professional care, a significant milestone in my physical healing. You've made remarkable progress, she told me during our final session, her professional demeanor softening, with genuine warmth. Not just physically. Thank you, I said, meaning it for more than just the medical care. For everything. Remember what I told you that first day? Patricia smiled as she packed her nursing supplies. The body and spirit heal together, or not at all. You've accomplished both. As Patricia's care ended, I began contemplating my next steps. Carol had generously offered her cabin for as long as you need it, but I recognized the importance of establishing my own space again. With Susan's help, I began searching for an apartment in Portland, something close to Roosevelt High for my eventual return to teaching, but in a different neighborhood from the house I'd shared with Joel. 28 days after surgery, I received a text from Joel. Settlement agreement signed. Ball in your court regarding meeting. Please let me know when, where. J. After consulting with Lily, I chose a cafe in Northeast Portland. A bright, airy place with outdoor seating that struck the right balance between public and private. I suggested the following Saturday at 11 a.m., a time that would naturally limit the conversation duration due to the lunch rush that would follow. Do you want me to sit with you? Lily offered when I told her about the arrangement. I considered but shook my head. No, but I'd appreciate you being nearby, at a separate table, close enough to intervene if needed, but giving us space for an honest conversation. The day before the meeting, I visited a hair salon in the small town near Carol's cabin. My hair had begun growing back after chemotherapy, short but thick, with a surprising amount of silver mixed with my original brown. Rather than coloring it, as I might have done before, I asked the stylist to shape it into a pixie cut that embraced both the length and the new color. It suits you, the stylist commented, turning my chair to face the mirror. Brings out your eyes and your cheekbones. The woman looking back at me seemed both familiar and new, thinner from illness, but with a strength in her gaze I hadn't seen before. I touched the short, silver-streaked hair, appreciating how it represented my journey, changed by circumstance, but emerging with a different kind of beauty. Saturday morning dawned clear and cool. Perfect weather for the outdoor cafe. Seating I'd requested. I dressed with deliberate care. A blue dress I'd bought online during recovery, comfortable but flattering. A light cardigan to ward off the breeze. Low-heeled boots that provided stability while I was still regaining strength. Simple silver. Earrings completed the look. Not my wedding set, which rested in an envelope with Susan, but pieces Lily had given me for my birthday years ago. Lily drove me to the cafe, parking across the street to give me a moment alone before entering. Remember, she said, squeezing my hand, you don't owe him anything. Not forgiveness. Not understanding, not even closure. This meeting is for you, on your terms. Joel was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner table with 2 coffee cups waiting. He stood as I approached, his expression shifting from anticipation to surprise as he took in my changed appearance. Sophie, he said, my name somewhere between greeting and exclamation. You look different? I supplied, taking the seat across from him. Beautiful, he finished, clearly thrown off script. The hair suits you. I nodded acknowledgement but didn't return the compliment, though he looked much as he always had, tanned from his Fiji trip, impeccably dressed in casual designer clothes that suggested effortless affluence. Once, I might have found that appearance charming. Now I saw only the careful construction of image that had always been central to Joel's identity. Thank you for agreeing to meet, he began after an awkward silence, and for being reasonable about the settlement. I know this situation isn't ideal. Ideal, I repeated, tasting the inadequacy of the word. Is that how you would characterize abandoning your wife during cancer recovery to vacation with your mistress? Not ideal? He flinched visibly. I deserve that. I know my actions appear indefensible. They don't appear indefensible, Joel. They are indefensible. I kept my voice level, conscious of nearby tables. But I didn't come here to list your transgressions or hear your justifications. I agreed. To this meeting for clarity and closure, not recrimination. Joel seemed momentarily at a loss, having clearly prepared for either anger he could soothe or vulnerability he could exploit. My calm directness left him without an obvious strategy. I never meant for any of this to happen, he finally said, falling back on vague contrition. The situation with Tammy, it just developed over time. And then your diagnosis came, and everything became so complicated. What exactly became complicated? I asked, genuinely curious about his perspective. Your ability to be honest? Your capacity to honor wedding vows during a health crisis? Your basic human empathy? He stared down at his untouched coffee. I couldn't handle it, Sophie. Watching you go through treatment, seeing you so ill. I'm not proud of it, but I couldn't face the possibility of losing you to cancer. Tammy was an escape from that reality. The explanation, likely rehearsed and certainly self-serving, still managed to surprise me with its fundamental selfishness. In Joel's narrative, his affair wasn't a betrayal, but a coping mechanism. His abandonment, not cruelty, but self-protection. So, your solution to being afraid of losing me to cancer was to betray me while I was fighting it? I shook my head, not in anger but in genuine bewilderment. Do you hear how that sounds? I know it was wrong, he acknowledged, meeting my eyes briefly before looking away. I handled everything terribly. If I could go back— But you can't, I interrupted gently. None of us can. We can only move forward from where we are. We sat in silence for a moment, the cafe's ambient noise filling the space between us. Nearby, a young couple laughed over shared pastries, their future still unwritten. A barista called out drink orders. Life continued all around us, while 17 years of shared history dissolved into formal agreements and awkward conversation. What will you do now? Joel finally asked. Heal, I said simply. Return to teaching. Live in a way that honors what cancer taught me about what matters. And us? The question hung between us, heavy with implication. There is no us, Joel. Not anymore. I said it without rancor, a statement of fact rather than punishment. You made your choice when you boarded that plane to Fiji. I've made mine in response. He nodded slowly, acceptance finally registering in his expression. I am sorry, Sophie, for everything. I know that doesn't change anything, but I need you to know that. I believe you're sorry, I acknowledged. But you're right, it doesn't change what happened or what comes next. We spoke a while longer, discussing practical matters about the house sale and division of personal items. Throughout the conversation, I maintained the boundary I had established, polite but firm, neither seeking nor offering emotional connection. When our cups were empty and the cafe beginning to fill with the lunch crowd, I stood to signal the meeting's end. Take care of yourself, Joel, I said, meaning it despite everything. He rose, hesitating as if unsure whether to offer a handshake or attempt a hug. In the end, he simply nodded. You too, Sophie. I hope you find happiness. As I walked away, Lily falling into step beside me as we left the cafe, I realized I felt neither the vindication nor the devastation I might have expected. Instead, there was a quiet certainty that I had controlled the narrative of our final meeting just as I was taking control of my life's next chapter. How do you feel? Lily asked as we reached her car. I considered the question carefully. Complete, I finally answered. Like I've closed a circle that needed closing. The weeks following my meeting with Joel unfolded with a momentum that seemed both overwhelming and necessary. The divorce proceedings progressed efficiently, our signed settlement agreement streamlining what could have been a contentious process. Susan kept me informed of each development, her updates increasingly focused on practical matters rather than emotional ones. The house listing goes live next week, she reported during one of our calls. The real estate agent thinks it will sell quickly given the location. Joel has already moved most of his personal items to a new condo downtown. I had opted not to return to the house at all, instead providing Lily with a detailed list of items I wanted from my former home. Some practical, my grandmother's cast iron cookware, my teaching materials, winter clothes, and some purely sentimental photo albums from before Joel, books from my father, the handmade quilt that had adorned our guest room. Remarkably, Joel raised no objections to any of my requests, instructing his assistant Kenneth to ensure everything was packed carefully and delivered to my new apartment. That apartment, a sun-filled one-bedroom in a converted Victorian near Roosevelt High, became my project and therapy during the final stages of physical recovery. Carol helped me shop for essential furniture, while Lily assisted with decorating, both understanding intuitively my need to create a space that held no echoes of my former life with Joel. "It's perfect for you," Lily declared when we finished. Arranging the living room, the afternoon light streaming through bay windows onto walls I'd painted a soft sage green. "It feels like Sophie, not Sophie and Joel." Her observation was exactly right. The space reflected choices made solely for my own comfort and pleasure. Bookshelves filled with novels and poetry collections, a writing desk positioned to catch. The morning light, photographs of landscapes rather than people, Cooper and Bailey's beds flanking a small gas fireplace. Nothing existed to accommodate someone else's preferences or needs. 6 weeks after my surgery, Dr. Reynolds declared me ready to resume part-time work. "Your recovery has been remarkable," she noted during our final post-operative appointment, "both physically and emotionally." "The two are connected," I replied, thinking of Patricia's wisdom about body and spirit healing together. "Indeed they are," Dr. Reynolds agreed, "and I've seen too many patients try to heal physically while remaining in situations that wounded them emotionally. Your decision to leave was medically sound, whatever else it may have been." The school welcomed me back with touching enthusiasm. My students had organized a "Welcome Back, Ms. Winters" banner in my classroom, and my colleagues arranged a small gathering in the teacher's lounge with cards and my favorite lemon pastries from the bakery near campus. "We're just glad to have you back," the principal said, handing me a plant for my classroom. "Take it slow. Let us know what you need." The return to teaching anchored me as little else could have. The familiar rhythm of lessons and discussions, the students' energy and curiosity, the sense of purpose that had always defined my professional identity. I started with just 3 classes, building gradually toward a full schedule as my stamina returned. 1 month after my return to Roosevelt High, I received an unexpected email from Kenneth, Joel's assistant. The subject line read simply, "Thought. You should know." The message contained no personal note, just a forwarded email exchange between Joel and Tammy. Her message, clearly sent in anger, accused him of stringing her along and making promises you never intended to keep. His response was defensive, citing complicated financial circumstances due to the divorce and suggesting they take a step back and reassess. I stared at the exchange, briefly transported back to the painful moment of discovering Joel's affair. But the emotional impact was strangely muted now, academic rather than visceral. I forwarded the email to Lily with a simple comment. "Karma works efficiently these days." Her response came within minutes. "Couldn't have scripted it better myself. Wine celebration tonight?" That evening, as Lily and I shared a bottle of Pinot Noir on my small balcony, she asked the question that had hovered unspoken between us for weeks. "Do you ever regret it, leaving the way you did?" I considered carefully, watching Cooper and Bailey play in the fenced courtyard below. "I regret that 17 years of marriage ended in betrayal and abandonment," I finally said. "I regret that cancer had to teach me lessons about priorities and self-worth that I should have learned earlier. But leaving when and how I did? No, that I don't regret at all." "He never saw it coming," Lily observed, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "Mr. Always in Control completely blindsided by his quiet, accommodating wife. That was his mistake," I said, sipping my wine. "Confusing accommodation with weakness, mistaking patience for passivity." The sun was setting over Portland, painting the sky in watercolor hues of pink and gold. In that moment, watching the day transition to evening from my own balcony, in my own space, I felt something I hadn't experienced in the long months of illness and betrayal, contentment. Not happiness exactly. That would come later in stops and starts, but a fundamental acceptance of where I was and what lay ahead. "To new beginnings," Lily said, raising her glass. I clinked mine against hers. And to unexpected strength. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.